That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, we're going to go through and we are going to be talking about every matchup this week, every running back, whether you should start him, sit him, some realistic expectations. But you know what we're doing. We're giving away some free Fantasy Flock Network hats as we do every single video for the people that drop those likes, leave those comments. The winners for this one, Pitcher Rendon and ETN. I'm pretty sure ETN's won a hat before. Maybe not. I don't know. Nonetheless, thank you all so much for always being out in those video premieres, being subscribed to the channel, and make sure you send me that email ASAP with your physical address so I can get that shipped out to you. And one other thing that you already know is that this video is sponsored by Underdog Fantasy. Over there on Underdog Fantasy, you can check out a ton of cool player props that are available to you in pretty much every single state. If you can play DFS, you can play Underdog Fantasy. It's not sports betting. I mean, if you're going to go through, look at the states that it's available in, pretty much every single state not named Nevada, Washington State, Wyoming, Hawaii, and I think that's about it. Maybe there are one or two other ones that we're missing. Of course, when you sign up and you use promo code FLOCK, they'll match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. So please take advantage of that. And yeah, let's go through and let's talk about every running back matchup here. And let's start it off with the Dallas Cowboys and the New Orleans Saints. And with Dallas, I mean, it's simple at this point. You play Ezekiel Elliott and you lower your expectations. I mean, I think that here with Zeke, it would be beautiful. It would be best case scenario. And I know a lot of people are going to be watching this on Friday, Saturday. I'll be brief with this. I think it would be best case scenario if they went through and they just rested Ezekiel Elliott for this week, played Tony Pollard. That way the people who own both Zeke and Pollard can play Tony Pollard as a top 5 running back, as the only player that's going to get touches in that backfield, and then have Ezekiel Elliott fully healthy going forward. Well, all reports are saying, no, trust me, Zeke's healthy. Zeke's playing a full workload. I can't buy that until we actually see it. I'm going to be expecting that Ezekiel Elliott's a high-end running back 2 this week. It's a tough matchup against New Orleans. I am uncertain with the entire workload, even though every single report is screaming that he is going to see a full workload. Right now, the line on this game is a -4.5 for the Dallas Cowboys. So you are imagining that they're going to be able to run the ball against the New Orleans Saints and not have to air it out with Dak Prescott and the receivers for this offense. You play Zeke, and in the case of the New Orleans Saints, really don't know what we can be expecting right now from the health of some of these running backs. I mean, Mark Ingram looks like he's practicing in full. Now, the issue is with Alvin Kamara, obviously everything hinges on him. I am recording this right now, Wednesday morning. I'm recording this Wednesday morning on December 1st, and the last report that we have on Alvin Kamara is he got in a limited session at practice on Tuesday. Now, if Kamara plays, you play Alvin Kamara. I mean, even if we're going to be lowering our expectations, as we told y'all to sell Alvin Kamara high. I mean, remember back when we were saying to sell Kamara high, you could have traded him. This is about 5 weeks ago. Jonathan Taylor, Najee Harris. I mean, we also said to trade him for Christian McCaffrey, which at the time was a good idea. Clearly now, that was horrible. Dalvin Cook, same thing there. Nonetheless, I mean, at this point, his value is cratered. I still think you have to lower your expectations with no Jameis Winston for this offense overall. But if Alvin Kamara were to play, knowing his role that he can have in the receiving game and the targets that he'd have out of the backfield, you probably have to go through and play Alvin Kamara regardless, just with lowered expectations. And now our next game will be the Atlanta Falcons and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You don't need me to tell you to go through and play Leonard Fournette. I mean, with Leonard Fournette as a running back that's had 62 targets so far this season. That is a ridiculous mark, averaging almost 6 targets a game here in Tampa. I mean, this past week, 44 fantasy points off of 4 touchdowns mainly. That's not sustainable. That touchdown rate can't keep up, even in a very efficient and prolific offense that he's playing in. But the usage in the receiving game has been there throughout the entire season so far. They're 11-point favorites in this game. You're assuming that they will be running the ball in the second half. Fire up Leonard Fournette. We have him as a top 5 running back this week. And in the case of Cordell Patterson, I know on paper, every single time you have a running back going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, we're screaming, avoid everywhere you can, avoid everywhere you can, avoid everywhere you can. And here with Cordell Patterson, it's a little bit of a different scenario because he's not a prototypical running back. You're not starting him hoping that we get to 80 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. He's not Damian Harris. He's a running back that's going to be providing the value in the receiving game. Like to go through and see what he saw last time against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I mean, we already covered this, but yes, it looks gross. 7 carries for 11 rushing yards. boo freaking who. He scores 23 fantasy points, damn near 24 points. The reason he is doing that, 5 receptions, 58 receiving yards out of the backfield, multiple touchdowns at the same time. And when you have this level of usage in the receiving game, he's like a wide receiver 3 combined with a low-end running back 2. We've talked about this time and time again, pretty much all season now. He's had 500 receiving yards so far this year. Through not even 10 weeks, he's averaging over 50 receiving yards a game. So even though it's a tough matchup against the Buccaneers, we have Cordell Patterson ranked as a top 10 running back this week confidently as well. Now, our next matchup will be the Arizona Cardinals and the Chicago Bears, where right now, you actually have James Conner in a range where he's probably yet again going to be a top 10 running back. Once you remove Chase Edmonds from this offense, last report that we have on Chase Edmonds here says that he has to be on the IR at least one more week, not looking to get activated. So you have James Conner as the bell cow running back. What's impactful is, and y'all know I was screaming, I was saying, sell high on Conner, sell high on Conner, sell high on Conner. All throughout the beginning part of the season where Chase Edmonds was seeing 70% of the snaps in this backfield, James Conner was only getting 30%. And you were looking at the touchdown rate from James Conner and going, okay, well, there's no way that's sustainable. There's no way he's going to be scoring almost 2 touchdowns for every 1 target he has out of the backfield. This is the exact opposite of a prototype of a running back that you're looking to target. Now, he's a different running back. Now you're looking at James Conner changing his workload from getting about 12, 13 carries a game to now he's up there closer to 16, 17. And also, he had 5 targets through 8 weeks. 5 targets through 8 games so far this season. That's with Chase Edmonds, averaging essentially half a target a game. Now, he is averaging 10 times that. He is averaging 5 targets a game with no Chase Edmonds in this offense. A completely different running back with this workload in one of the best offenses in the NFL. You're starting James Conner as a top 10 running back, especially if we get Kyler Murray back this week. Now, with David Montgomery, we do have him ranked in our top 24 running backs. It's not going to be a great matchup against the Arizona Cardinals. With David Montgomery here, he's been just very disappointing so far this season. Even I know a lot of people hated us when we ranked David Montgomery as a running back 2 this past week against the Detroit Lions. People are screaming, Mason's a beautiful matchup. You're disrespecting our guy, yada, yada. The issue is the offense is so damn capped. Right now I'm actually surprised to see that the Cardinals are only 7.5 point favorites. I'd be taking Arizona minus 7.5 with the assumption we have Kyler Murray back this week. Because this Chicago Bears offense, it's bad. It's very, very bad. It's going to limit the ceiling that you're getting from David Montgomery. You have to play Montgomery, though, when he's a running back that's getting about 80% of the snaps in his backfield. Whenever, you don't really have anybody else staying healthy across the entire running back landscape. You have so many injuries. You're probably playing Montgomery, but it's gross, and I would assume that he's going to be probably a low-end running back 2 this week. I really don't like the matchup because he hasn't been getting targeted out of the backfield. You kind of want him playing in a game where the Chicago Bears can lead, and that's not going to be the case against the Cardinals. Now, our next matchup will be the Los Angeles Chargers and the Cincinnati Bengals. Don't need to talk about anything. Joe Mixon, top 3 running back. Austin Eckler, top 5 running back. You don't love the matchup against it. It doesn't matter. You're starting both running backs, and they're going to be elite. Let's move on. Now, the Detroit Lions and the Minnesota Vikings. Now, here's where we can have a conversation. I was so surprised to see people in the live stream last night on Tuesday going, okay, Mason, here are my options. I can go through and I can play, David Montgomery in my flex spot, or I can go through and I could drop Corey Davis and I can pick up Alexander Madison off the waiver wire to play him over David. Yes, go get Alexander Madison everywhere you can. We have Alexander Madison ranked as the running back 3 this week. I believe the only running backs we have ranked ahead of Alexander Madison are Jonathan Taylor and Joe Mixon. With Madison, this is a running back that's every single week you have not had Dalvin Cook in this offense. Gotten to 30 touches. This matchup against the Detroit Lions is the best matchup you can ask for, and he's playing in a pretty damn good offense. Fire up Alexander Madison as a top 5 running back. The only running backs, and I repeat, these are my rankings. And I'm not doing this to be hot takey at all. I think this is fair to say because the 2 weeks that we've had from Alexander Madison with no Dalvin Cook, Alexander Madison came out and in the first week, his fantasy production wasn't through the roof. 23 fantasy points. Doesn't matter. 26 carries, 112 rushing yards, 8 targets out of the backfield, 59 receiving yards. The next week against the Lions, this same matchup, he came out 25 carries, 113 rushing yards, 7 receptions, 40 receiving yards, and the receiving touchdown at the same time. The only running backs I'm starting over Alexander Mattison this week, Jonathan Taylor, Joe Mixon. So unless you have Jonathan Taylor and Joe Mixon on your team, do not ask me in a live stream if you should start Alexander Mattison. Alexander Madison's a running back that you are playing everywhere. You're playing Alexander Mattison over Leonard Fournette, over Najee Harris, over Cordell Patterson, over James Robinson, over Darrell Henderson, over James Conner, over Elijah Mitchell. You're playing Alexander Mattison. Now, in the case of the Detroit Lions, at the time of this recording, looking like DeAndre Swift is going to miss. And I wouldn't be surprised if Swift misses a couple weeks here, because what's the incentive for this team to bring back DeAndre Swift and rush him back from that shoulder injury? I mean, this is a team that is yet to win a football game. So I'm operating under the assumption that we get Jamal Williams in this backfield. And if Jamal Williams is going to be the back, I think you do play him. It's going to be a very bad offense. I would almost compare Jamal Williams. I think the perfect comparison is comparing him to David Montgomery. He's a slightly better version of David Montgomery. He's playing in an offense where he's probably going to be seeing 80% of the snaps. He's going to have some level of usage in the receiving game. But at the end of the day, he is going to be capped by how bad his offense is overall and the lack of involvement that he's going to have at the goal line, particularly because they can't get inside the 10-yard line. So with Jamal Williams, we would be starting him as a mid to low-end running back too. I think he's going to be very similar to Montgomery here. Now, our next game, we have the New York Giants and the Miami Dolphins. And I have to give y'all a shout out. I have to go through and address something that we maybe have gotten wrong. I mean, in the last video where we went through and we did our running back rankings, and that's this Miami Dolphins defense. We went through and said it was a good matchup to be going up against the Miami Dolphins. Y'all corrected me down there in the comment section. Y'all said, Mason, you need to look at this again. The Miami defense is now healthy. The Miami defense is significantly better than what they were. I mean, at the beginning of the season, giving 30 points up to the Falcons, 45 to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And since then, I'll agree with you. It looks pretty good. Over the past 3 weeks, you only give up 10 points to Lamar Jackson, 17 points to the Jets, and 10 points to the Carolina Panthers, and obviously shutting down Cam Newton, getting Cam Newton benched. So maybe this isn't as easy as a matchup as I gave it credit for. Right now, the Miami Dolphins are favored by 4.5 points. And you have Mike Glennon as well starting at quarterback for the New York Giants. So we had Saquon Barkley ranked as a low-end running back 1, a high-end running back 2. We had him ranked at running back 13. I think that was a little bit too high. I think now that we have the Daniel Jones injury, we have to be lowering our expectations overall for this offense for the New York Giants. I think we most likely have to move Saquon Barkley down in that similar range to someone like Jamal Williams, because he's a very similar running back. I would have him over David Montgomery. I'd have him over Jamal Williams for that reason being is he can get 7 targets out of his backfield. If he can get 7 targets in a PPR format, he can pick up some cheap fantasy points. So yeah, I think we have to lower our expectations though with Barkley. And our next running back, Myles Gaskin. We've talked about this at length. You start Myles Gaskin every single week. You have no Malcolm Brown. I hated Gaskin coming into the season, but that was because you had Malcolm Brown there and he was not looking like he was going to be a 3-down running back. That has since changed with Myles Gaskin with no Malcolm Brown. I mean, just going through this again, we've done this every single week so far. Let's go through and let's look with Malcolm Brown. I mean, he had 9, 5, 13, 2, 5, 5 carries. He had 1 game with double-digit carries. Since then, he has had 6 weeks straight, every single week getting double-digit carries. 15, 12, 20, 14, 23, 16. So with Myles Gaskin, you're starting him. I mean, yes, the efficiency is going to be very bad in the offense. It seems like every single player we talked about, they're all very similar. I mean, you have these running backs that are going to get very large workloads and very bad offenses. You have to just close your eyes, plug and play him as low-end running back 2s, and hope that Myles Gaskin, like he did last week, comes away with 2 rushing touchdowns, gets you 19 fantasy points. Now, our next matchup will be the Philadelphia Eagles and the New York Jets. With New York, you're not starting anybody. Please, for the love of God, I got baited in to starting Ty Johnson in a lot of questions that we had in live streams against Houston last week. We were saying, okay, well, Ty Johnson getting 7 targets a game. I mean, no Michael Carter getting his 7 targets a game. He can get up to 8 to 9. Oh, my God, that was horrible. Tevin Coleman coming out, being the starting running back. I mean, it was a 3 running back split for the worst offense in the NFL. You can't start any running back there. Pass. And then the same thing with Philadelphia. I liked Miles Sanders last week. Miles Sanders goes down and is in and out of the game with an injury. And the reports are saying now that Sanders may miss. Now, if Miles Sanders were to miss this game, which I'm not expecting to happen, we do play Boston Scott. If we don't have Sanders or Jordan Howard, it will be a split between Kenneth Gainwell and Boston Scott. Presumably Boston Scott seeing the carries on first and second down. And in this nice matchup against the New York Jets, I think that's where you could go through, and I think that's where you could start Boston Scott. Now, in the event that Miles Sanders is active, I think it's maybe very similar to what we were talking about in the case of Dallas, where you don't really want Sanders active because then it's going to be a running back backfield split into three ways that you don't think Sanders is going to be able to get up to 75% of the touches if he's not fully healthy. So if Sanders were to play, even though it's a really nice matchup against the Jets, I think you avoid the backfield entirely. Now, our next game, Indianapolis Colts, Houston Texans. Keep it very brief. Jonathan Taylor, running back 1 in his own tier. Don't need to talk about it. Houston Texans. Now, this is also a running back backfield that we've been on record saying, you know what, I just don't want anything to do with it. I mean, I know Rex Burkhead is getting a workload. Trust me, I understand it. This past week, it looks a little bit different than what it actually did. I mean, 2 weeks ago as well, where 2 weeks ago he came out, I believe the stat line was he had like 18 carries. And with those 18 carries, he came away with about 3.9 fantasy points. And the reason being is with Rex Burkhead, obviously this is a horrendous offense. And if you're just getting carries between the 20s on a really bad offense that's not really going to have any touchdown upside, then you have to be lowering your expectations, especially if you're not going to have involvement in the receiving game. Now, this past week against the Jets, he does get 3 targets out of the backfield, 12 carries. He does come away with 8.4. Still can't be interested. I mean, this offense right now is going to be projected to lose by 9 points in this game, according to Las Vegas. I think that we just go through and we avoid this entire backfield. You can't play a committee running back for the Houston Texans here. I think that would be brutal. Now, our next game will be the Josh Jacobs versus Antonio Gibson showdown, where you're playing Gibson. I mean, obviously, we know J.D. McKissic. Antonio Gibson has always been a running back that you know he can catch passes. It's essentially would they let him in Washington to unlock that full-time seal. Now that you have no J.D. McKissic, fire the hell up Antonio Gibson. Antonio Gibson will be that low-end running back 1, high-end running back 2. Don't love the matchup. The Raiders are favorited in this game by 2.5 points, but nonetheless, Gibson should be that bell cow running back getting to 20-plus touches in this game. You start him everywhere you can. Now, in the case of Josh Jacobs, this past week, I mean, he did kind of transform his workload to being the 3-down running back in Las Vegas. He comes out 22 carries. I mean, his usual 4 targets out of the backfield, which at this point seems crazy. It's crazy to see that with Josh Jacobs here. I mean, this is a running back that, yes, he was in and out of that first game with an injury against the Baltimore Ravens. So if we remove that first week, because remember, he was really just truly in and out that game, and we look at the past 8 weeks that we have had, in the 8-week span, he's had 34 targets. My dummy math tells me that's about 4.25 targets, maybe 4.5 targets a game. So if you're going to be looking at Josh Jacobs in that light, I mean, he's a completely different running back. I believe the highest mark that we had of his season so far coming into the year was actually him hovering around 3 targets a game exactly. I'm going to look this up to make sure I'm not making a fool of myself. Let's go to my draft guide. And yeah, I mean, you had 3 targets a game in 2020. So he is getting the involvement as a receiving running back. What you really want to see, though, with Josh Jacobs still at the end of the day is you want to see this team being able to get to the red zone, be able to get him that touchdown upside. Not necessarily the perfect matchup to do so against the Washington football team. They have a much better rush defense than they have a pass defense. I think Jacobs will be about a mid-running back, too. Now, our next game, we got the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Los Angeles Rams. Well, right now, it looks like Darrell Henderson may be missing this game. And if Darrell Henderson were to miss, like I said, we're recording this, Wednesday morning. So right now, we don't really have the clarity. Just what we have is Darrell Henderson may be limited in practice this week. That was the report that came out yesterday. I think that we almost have to just operate under the assumption that you're going to have Sony Michel. And with Sony Michel, I think this is the perfect matchup for him. I think you play Sony Michel against the Jacksonville Jaguars for the reason being is you're not thinking of Sony Michel as a running back that's going to catch passes out of the backfield. You don't want him involved in a shootout in Los Angeles. You want him playing in a game where this team's going to be leading by multiple touchdowns, where they're just going to be able to give the ball to Sony Michel to rush it 20 times between the tackles and have that touchdown upside. Right now, the Rams are favored at about 13 is the spread in this game. So I think, honestly, out of any matchup you'd play Sony Michel, this would be the one. Now, our next game will be the Baltimore Ravens and the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I have to give an apology. Last night in the live stream, I was just going through and saying, oh, Devonta Freeman, not interesting. Devonta Freeman, not interesting. We don't want anything. This past week, he looked okay. I'm not going to lie on that. Devonta Freeman, had his moments. This is a running back that came out. He had 16 carries back-to-back weeks here. Now, the issue is, of course, in a Lamar Jackson offense, you're not going to be getting the checkdowns out of the backfield because Lamar can run it on his own. And at the same time, with Lamar Jackson, you know that this is also a quarterback that can vulture rushing touchdowns at the goal line. Now, to look at what we had from Latavius Murray this past week, because I was operating under the assumption that Latavius Murray would expand his role another week healthy and removed from his own injury. Latavius Murray actually had less carries in this backfield. He went from having 10 carries to only 8. So I was clearly wrong about our assessment of Devontae Freeman. He looks like he is going to be the starting running back. But what's the real upside? I think that maybe you just hold him off and you play him in matchups like the Rams going up against the Jags. That's where we can play Freeman. Against the Steelers, I'm not going to be excited about it at all. I think he has a very low ceiling. With Najee Harris, yes, this offense is horrendous. Yes, you hate Pittsburgh, the entire team at this point, but you have to play Najee Harris. He's going to get 20 touches. Now, our next matchup will be the Seattle Seahawks and the San Francisco 49ers. And here in Seattle, I mean, like we said last week, you can't play any starting running back. I mean, even if this offense gets the bump up, Alex Collins, DJ Dallas, they're just so damn bad. This is going to be a committee backfield. You're never going to see a feature down RB here, not named Chris Carson. And in the case of the 49ers, fire up Elijah Mitchell. Elijah Mitchell was used as, a bell cow running back, removing Jeff Wilson from this offense a week ago. Now that you have no Deebo Samuel here as well, Elijah Mitchell is a easy running back one, especially in a game where the 49ers currently are favored. Now, our next game, the Kansas City Chiefs and the Denver Broncos, where the Chiefs are favored by 10 points in this contest. I think that we're going to go through and play Clyde Edwards-Helaire with CEH. His first week back, we were saying that he was going to be the running back you wanted to start over Darrell Williams, but his first week back, it was going to be a 50-50 backfield split. You weren't going to see Clyde Edwards-Helaire handle the majority of snaps. That's exactly what happened. And now, what's the second part of that prediction? The second part of that prediction is coming out of the bye week when Clyde Edwards-Helaire is implemented back into this offense. He will not go up to being an 80%, 90% snap rate player. He's not going to be Saquon Barkley, but he will be up to 65% of the snaps in this Kansas City Chiefs offense. And if he's getting a little used everywhere in this offense, where this is a team that clearly has a need for playmakers outside of Kelsey and Tyreek Hill, I think that you can actually start Clyde Edwards-Helaire. On paper, the Broncos defense is not one we want to attack, but I am always the person screaming, Las Vegas knows more than we do. 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 And right now, if they have this spread at 10 points for this game, where the Denver Broncos offense probably isn't going to be able to get anything going, I think you just go through and assume that they can actually run the ball a little bit in the second half here for the Kansas City Chiefs. You play Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And in the case of Denver, I don't want to be playing either Javonte or, Melvin Gordon. I love Javonte Williams in the long term. But at the end of the day, this week in particular is not going to be the week to go through and expect Javonte takes over as the bell cow running back here. It will eventually happen. I want to say it will eventually happen where Javonte Williams takes half of that usage from Melvin Gordon, and he's a running back that we're starting every single week. But for now, that's just not the case. Now, our last game on Monday night will be the New England Patriots and the Buffalo Bills. You cannot start either Damian Harris or Ramondre Stevenson. With Damian Harris, this is a running back that literally is only getting used on first and second down. And literally, this is probably the best thing I've ever said. This is probably the best prediction we ever had. I had to flex on y'all here. Coming into the season, our exact words on why you should not draft Damian Harris was he was going to be a first and second down running back with no usage in the receiving game, which was going to limit his ceiling throughout the year. And Ramondre Stevenson had shown enough and was a good enough prospect to eat into the Damian Harris workload at the end of the season, specifically for the fantasy football playoffs. And at that time, Stevenson was going to have a role large enough to make it where you just couldn't even start Damian Harris. That's exactly what's happened. That's exactly what's happened with Ramondre Stevenson. If he's taking half of the snaps, you just simply can't go through and play Damian Harris. With Harris, he's going to be so damn limited, especially in a tough matchup against the Buffalo Bills, where right now the Patriots are actually underdogs in this contest. And with Buffalo Bills, I have to admit that we were very wrong on Zach Moss. Earlier this season, you were seeing Zach Moss come out and operate as the running back in the receiving game and in the red zone, getting every single valuable touch for one of the most productive offenses in the NFL. I bought into him. Shouldn't have bought into just a very bad running back. At this point, you can't start anybody for the Buffalo Bills either in a committee backfield where, it's a pretty brutal matchup at the same time against the Buffalo Bills. And now, of course, thank you so much for everybody coming out to the video. Make sure you go down there, drop that like, leave a comment to enter in to win a free Fantasy Flock Network hat. And of course, make sure you go support the show by deciding to deposit on Underdog with promo code FLOCK for your first time. They'll match that deposit dollar for dollar up to $100 with promo code FLOCK. Find the link in the live chat, find it in the description of the video. Of course, thank you all so much. I really hope that y'all enjoyed this video, and I hope that you have a great day, and I see you on the live stream tonight.